Hey everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this card using the April stamp of the month called Scandinavian Folk Art Greetings. You can get this stamp set for $5 with a $50 purchase during the month of April, or for free with a $50 purchase if you're a VIP. So I'm going to use candy apple ink and candy apple and white daisy cardstock and a piece of the mix-in papers. So I'm going to attempt to mimic the red work embroidery designs for my card design. The images just reminded me of images that you see in red work. So I'm stamping out these images in candy apple ink on white daisy cardstock, and I'm going to leave enough room around each of these images so that I can cut them down. And it's going to look like an embroidery sampler, so I'm going to cut these into rectangles and squares. So I've just selected some of the smaller images from the stamp set, and then this sentiment that says "You're the best." And then this one is a cluster of some of the really small images. I've just put them together on the block to create a cluster that I'll cut out in a square. So I'll get all these stamped out. And then I'm going to stamp the word thanks in Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat emboss white detail embossing powder on candy apple cardstock. So I've got my sentiment thanks stamped out, and then I'm going to sprinkle it with white detail embossing powder. And I'll knock off any extra stray bits with a dry paintbrush before I heat it up with my heat tool. And then I'll melt all of that embossing powder. Okay, so I'm going to buff out that extra anti-static powder off of that sentiment and clean it up with my microfiber cleaning cloth. So now I'm taking a piece of the mix-in paper and I'm cutting it at 5.5 by 4.25, which is an A2 card size. And then I'm going to cut down each of these stamped images into squares and rectangles. So I'm starting out with the "You're the Best" image because it's the widest. So I'm going to start with that one and then cut everything else to match. So that's about 1 7/8. And so I'm going to cut this cluster down to 1 7/8 square. I'm not really using a pattern. I'm just kind of winging it here and just letting the images dictate the design. So got these cut down to 1 7/8 inch square, and they match. And then these two images I'm going to make rectangles, but they're also going to be 1 7/8 inches across. The height will be a little bit different though. So I'm just figuring out where to place it in my trimmer so that I can center that image. And that one is going to be 2.5 inches tall by 1 7/8. So I'm doing the same thing with this image, and I realized that I didn't stamp it straight, so I'm putting it in my trimmer so that I straighten it out when I trim that bottom part so it's straight and then centered. So it will be 1 7/8 inch wide and also 2.5 inches tall. So when I cluster them together on my card front, I can make a rectangle that's even out of all of them. So I'm just going to place everything out and see what it looks like on the mix-in papers. And I feel like it needs a little more grounding, so I'm going to put some candy apple cardstock behind it. And then I'm going to leave just a really thin border around each of these squares. When you look at redwork, there's a lot of white space on a lot of the designs. So I want it to keep it as simple as possible, but also define each of those squares and rectangles. So now I'm figuring out how tall I need to cut this piece of candy apple cardstock. So I'll just keep placing everything down and seeing what it looks like and trim it up a little bit more. Okay, we're getting there. All right, that's gonna work. Okay, so now I'm going to trim out my thanks sentiment, and this one I'm going to dovetail each of the ends, but it's going to be a very shallow dovetail because I don't want to cover up too much of that mix-in paper design. So I'm just trimming this down, and then I'll hand cut my dovetail. So just snip in the middle and then take each of the corners to meet that snip. So snip, and then each of the corners to meet that snip. And then you've got your dovetailed image. Okay, so now I'm going to start assembling my card. Just try to keep everything as simple and clean as possible. So I'm going to put this down with Tombow tape. And then I'll add the candy apple piece, also with Tombow. Leave a border around it. And then I'm going to pop the rest of these pieces with thin foam tape. And then I'll place those on my card front. So all of these supplies are available in my online store. I will make a list with links in the description below. And just keep in mind that this stamp set is available only during the month of April. So I've got all of my images popped and placed on my card front, and to finish it off, I'm going to add a couple of these white dots, acrylic dots. And there's my finished card. Clean and simple. So I appreciate you watching my video today. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. And thanks for watching.